Well, you are most welcome, like John would say, to this month's course on the Master of Science in Having an Ecocentric Worldview. And my apologies, I had a few plans to have guests by this date, didn't pan out. One guy, pretty ridiculous responses at the last minute, saying doesn't like the vibe of my YouTube channel. I'm going to have to ask him for more feedback because feedback is valuable. It'll help me create better collaborations in the future or at least be better at knowing who to ask. So, oh no, this is beautiful. Speaking of pink, there was a lady with a beautiful pink toque one time, and she is also somebody that I'm hoping to do a series with, and one of the subjects could have fallen under this, but it'll take time. But anyways, after today, there's really one more to finish my third year, to have a master's of science, we could say more psychology, to develop an ecocentric worldview, which falls under sustainability, which is system science. And of course, because you start with psychology, and sustainability is the earth system sciences, you must be a systems thinker of everything interconnected, which I've never met anybody like that before, so it takes a lot of hard work. Speaking of hard work, Southeast Asia, I think Greenpeace did a great job with some activism I saw in the news. I saw a victory in the news for Alaska, where they won environmental protection advocates to declare some water protected. But it's kind of weird how it's reported. You can tell people don't have an ecocentric worldview because it says, who won was, let's say, these First Nations and these environmental activists, as if, they are the ones that need water and nobody else, safe water to drink. So you can tell how the news is reported. It should be us as cowards didn't participate in this fight. So really, there's no win because minorities eventually lose, majorities eventually win, and you can tell in the way it's reported that majorities are nowhere near an ecocentric worldview. Still, I will remain who I am and have the conversations as who I am. But next month, if I also don't have a guest speaker or a special project, there's still a couple of songs I wanted to do that relate to ecocentric thinking. Maybe I'll do that. And I still have a lot of readings that I'll give you in the next month. So I'm up to a reading now. What else did I want to say is a good sign related to environmental protection? And again, just how we phrase that. We should say living home protection or whatever it is. I see how, oh my God, you guys are screwed up, politicians. And why Chevron or ExxonMobil declare their big profits? Because it's like Loki said in the first Avengers movie again, you really are sheep. You want to be led, and you're led by money, and you're led by the path of least resistance and how to lose your attention span and consumerism and addictions and just blaming everybody for not defending the planet that you live, which is the only one which you rely for living a healthy, happy lifestyle, and your kids and grandkids that you keep having too. And it's getting worse and worse. Like you see that, the water that will be available for the states coming from a particular source is going to be that the states have to kind of turn against each other, which again goes back to something I said a few days ago is, if people believe in the Anthropocene, really, they would say, okay, provinces, states, subsections, islands, even if an island in the Philippines is big enough, then it should be separate. So Jeju Island should also be separate from the rest of Korea at this time, if you guys understand what Anthropocene means, so that you focus on one aspect of mitigation, which is self-reliance. So the states right now, are they more likely to kind of go to war with each other because water is kind of important? Or are they going to go to war with Canada or Mexico or just other countries and ship water, or just, go seize a floating glacier and bring it, and everybody's fighting over it, and they're shooting at the glacier. I don't know how you guys are going to go insane, but read Isaac Asimov's story Nightfall, and you'll kind of see what's coming. And it's not coming at the end of this century. It's coming in the next 2-3 years. It's going to get intense, people. Anyways, it's up to you, people primates. I mean, I'm reading this Sapiens book again, and it's kind of, my God, you guys can't help yourselves because you don't really know yourselves. Okay, so hey guys, you know what I'm going to do, or girls, or ladies, or students, or nobody. Martin, I'll start talking to myself. I'm the only teacher and a student, which assures good conversation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the end of the letter where I fired my master's degree faculty, except I'll skip Appendix 1, because Appendix 1 is related to something I might do next month if I don't have anything special. And it relates to things I promised I was working on and doing when I was writing this letter, and I'll update how much more of it I've done as my share of my skill sets and my understanding of things and what I think I can do. Okay, so some of the things I'll review from that Appendix 1. So now I'll go just to Appendix 2, all right? Okay, so here we are, folks. Appendix 2 was the letter of reference from the student in the geology class, and it was something that I needed to do to take a break from the nonsense, hypocrisy, incongruences, cognitive dissonance of my own master's degree program. So she wrote to me regarding Martin Parizeau, to whom it may concern. I met Martin in September 2012 during our Geology 111 Discovering Planet Earth class at Vancouver Island University. Since it was my first year at university and I struggle with a generalized anxiety disorder, I was very distraught and stressed out while trying to understand the concepts that were being taught in this class. It was very difficult for me to focus during a lecture because I was too busy worrying about all the other things I had to do in my other classes. And when I read this letter of hers, I praised her for that paragraph because it's a great way to understand and describe anxiety in the focus of school. It's a great simple way to just explain it, in the sense that it's hard to concentrate on what you have to do when you're at this place at this time, when you're thinking of the next place you're going to be, the next thing you're going to have to do. And it's traumatic, and I was telling somebody the other day, when I was at university, I had no supports. I didn't have a university, that found me or that came and introduced themselves in class. Say, if you're having these issues, you have these services which are paid for by your fees. And again, this is very important for universities to do this. It'll help their stats of successful students go up, which is good for their reputation, for example. Is the money's there, just don't let the staff stay in the offices all the time and wait for somebody to come in. It's that easy, the logic. Now this praises me as a tutor in part, not just as a, with counseling skills, let's say, but it also kind of shows that when the university banned me later on, when I'm still trying to find a resolution for this, and I was working there as a staff as well for the role of tutor for the same department that I referred her to that was successful for her, it's kind of ironic if that's, if I've explained it properly, that you can see the irony, is I'm getting a letter of reference to prove to them that when they ban me, it's actually, and they ban me after getting this letter of reference, it's ridiculous, right? They are self-defeating in their own success as management elites or faculty elites within a university whose ratings kept going down. It's not like I didn't offer them, recommendations with these things. Martin is a blessing in my life because all it took was for me to sit beside him in the front row, for him to recognize my need for additional support. Not only did Martin step up and make me feel more comfortable in class, he would come early or stay late with me to explain the theories and teachings that I did not understand. Martin would also voluntarily arrive to class with an extra set of notes printed out for me to follow during the lectures, which was a big help for me to follow and highlight during lectures. On top of this, Martin would talk to me about other things going on in my life that may have been adding to my stress levels and anxiety, while his calm and professional demeanor was very soothing for my anxious temperament. You know, I didn't plan this, but at the beginning of this paragraph, I picked up my energies. They were hyper, and there was an anxiety in there as well. And I focused on both the reading and my breathing. And you can tell in that paragraph that starts with Martin is and ends with anxious temperament, is I was grounding myself, because anxiety is a big part of what I inherited from my maternal side of the family. Additionally, Martin advised me of VIU's disability services, which offers additional support to students who need it. I made an appointment to tell them my problems, and after having my doctor fill out my form stating I had anxiety that interfered with my education, they were able to provide me with a tremendous amount of extra support. Since I knew Martin could not help me with all my other classes, including the ones coming in the following semester, this was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, knowing I would have a tutor at no cost to me. This was life-changing, and I can honestly say I do not know if I would still be in university if it wasn't for Martin's help in getting this extra support. Feel free to contact me with any other questions. Her first name's Candace. So it was a good break for my master's degree taking this class, and it turns out I didn't expect her last sentence, but that's a powerful last sentences for a reference letter. It says, wow, if it wasn't for Martin, I might not have been guided or mentored down the right path early enough to actually, and again, this is a if, maybe, to have succeeded. And she might have succeeded because she already admitted to anxiety in her life even before she entered university, which is a great tool right there to just be able to know that that is something that you have to always compensate for, right? And you get better at it when you're not in denial, right? It's always there to compensate for. But the toolkits that you develop over time without the denial of, how anxiety affects you is something that is already an advantage she had in her life before she met me. But I also said that the teacher I had, who I think he retired soon after that because his wife was not well, and he was also getting annoyed with the politics of the university. But I appreciated that really early on, and I was so kind of busy settling into this class and also helping and thinking of my own anxiety in class, which I have as well, a little bit, not that much for something like this, but and in a way she helped me as much as I helped her, because for me this was rewarding to make a real connection, which I was not able to do. Not that I didn't try with master's students in my cohort, which were more faking the friendships and the collaborations instead of, they were more like competitive in their behaviors, and they might have entered the master's program like this, my cohort, but the teachers also facilitated this approach. So anyways, I can't remember if I talked about a shirk funding, which comes every year, and it includes the social sciences, which would have included our master's degree under the social sciences, and the teachers promoted us to apply for it, but I didn't, because what I did was I did a little test first to see if I could get at least half of the cohort, which wasn't big in my master's degree, to do it together and to promote collaborology or cooperation in the application instead of every man, woman for themselves, in the sciences, which is what you could see, is been happening with COVID. Countries and businesses are doing this. So, I mean, we're lucky with COVID that we had a lesson to learn, that as a species, I mean, we're not learning our lessons, and we can no longer learn important lessons like this. But I mean, it is kind of obvious. So when something worse comes along, people are at least going to say, we learned all the lessons from COVID not to fail at this worst thing. by showing how much we failed at COVID, and yet we're deeper in our denial. What explains this? Well, I don't know if I'll be dead at this point, but, the theory of HSD has been talking about this for a long time. So maybe that's when people might discover what I'm talking about. They might start asking questions. What is wrong with our species? We always think, oh my God, we made a little step forward in saving a little bit of water there. As, all these other steps backwards, we don't include in the story. Because we need to disconnect from reality more and more. We need to focus on our feelings instead of developing problem-solving tools. So anyways, the cohorts did not agree to they wanted to apply in their own way or not apply. So, I could tell it's not, even if they were a little bit convinced more with arguments to apply together, their wiring was going to sabotage it, consciously or unconsciously. And what I wanted to say is I didn't have supports in the University of Ottawa when I was doing a bachelor's there, where I was never accepted in the psychology program, but I ended up sticking it to them in the sense that I developed, on average back then, more credits in psychology courses than people that were accepted in the psychology program. I mean, it's fine. I mean, I took all the courses I wanted. I had to move around from, for a couple of different places to be able to keep picking these courses, and ended up in a general ed program where it was 2 blocks. One was philosophy. So I've often said my major is psychology and my minor is philosophy, although it's not something that would be written on the diploma. And the diploma is so generalized, it just says BA General. This is why years later, a few years ago, I put, because it's in the 90s, I got my BA. I put pressure on the University of Ottawa, and I say, come on, guys, how am I supposed to prove, except for showing a list of all my post-secondary courses, which annoys the hell out of employers or people, is, that my focus was more psychology. So finally, after, including a few links to my vlogs, including the ones where I talk about the University of Ottawa, is I got a letter that is an official letter that says, Martin, with that student number this, has, a BA where there was 2 blocks of subjects that he had to make for this BA, and one is psychology and one is philosophy. But I mean, if you look at the number of credits that are minimum to make these 2 blocks in each of these 2 topics, is psychology was almost double the number of credits required. So that's why I say that. But it's not officially like I have a degree in psychology with a major of something, but I say it like that because it's the simple way to say it. But that letter helps, right, from the University of Ottawa that came decades later, that helps, right? And I have to put pressure on them to say, hey, I got a BA from you, and it's got a better rating to use my BA from your university than the above level graduate diploma from Vancouver Island University, especially as their rating keeps going down. So like if you apply for professional, highly skilled professional visas in certain countries, Vancouver Island University isn't even a university they will acknowledge a degree from. So then I would use my old 1990s University of Ottawa. But if it says just general on it, now at least I have this letter, which is, a very official letter from them as, as an attachment, but it still has all the information for them to verify it. So anyways, continuing to the next appendix, and maybe I won't do all of the appendix now. I know I'm doing one probably next time or during the month, but now I'll go to Appendix 3. Appendix 3 is the letter I wrote to apply for this program. And remember, I wanted to take a few courses first that were with the same faculty, with the plan to, because I was getting back into, I had taken a few certificates and diplomas there, both in their Duncan and Nanaimo locations, but not anything that was, credit-related degrees for BAs or MAs. So I decided to do that, and it's been a while for me. So after I got the 2 letters of references, and one was available to me, although it wasn't supposed to, because they're supposed to be anonymous. But for me, I don't agree with that, so I'm not criticizing the person for having done that. And the other, I criticize them for not being courageous enough to give me a copy of it later on, of his reference to me, which may have said, as many, we have to watch for this with him, because I've had him in my class, and, he questions things, or you'd never know if he's going to challenge the status quo in front of class or whatever it might be. That could be one of the reasons he didn't give me a copy. Like, he had good things to say, and they were trying to recruit students for the first cohort, which strategically was a good time for me to apply, with having been outside of school for so long. But, I know how to do long-term planning for my own education. And the University of Ottawa, I did that as well, without a counselor or guidance or anything, and I managed to get my BA. But with a lot of challenges as a student, without a tutor, without understanding, let's say, how anxiety affected me and my attention, my ability to pay attention, for example, are some of the challenges I had during my BA. And all these things, without support, allowed me to succeed, in part because I learned how to support myself, or to pass on these skill sets or this knowledge to Candace, for example, later on, right? I didn't take a course to become a good tutor, for example, although some places I took courses and they think they were great, and it's like, I should be teaching this course myself. So years after my BA, I still remember having dreams, nightmares, that I'm still in school at the University of Ottawa, where it wasn't a great, there was a lot of competition type attitudes, and attitudes from teachers who weren't that great at what they did when you gave them feedback, or it was kind of sad, but at least there was a union there that tried to get feedback out of the students and into the teachers and faculties at the end of the semester. That was a good sign that kept their rating higher. Something like that is not done at most universities now. I think I can say the word most. Certainly not at the University of Ottawa, and certainly not at North Island College, which is a place that I worked a little bit as a tutor and as a student, and as a student union representative. So, all right. Now, when I had these nightmares, by the way, I was not naked in a nightmare, but I was remembering that I was at the end of the semester, or almost, and I hadn't started any of the readings, and I hadn't written the essay or worked on it or anything like that. And, it's traumatic. And I could wake up and look at my diploma, say, stop having these nightmares, I finished. But the brain, the trauma of all this anxiety experienced by yourself, wanting to pursue higher education, wanting to continue to allow the part of me that was curious, and the concept of knowledge that was a big motivator in my life, that gave me passion, needed to be done. But I tell you, I still have trauma just to have done a bachelor's degree, and most certainly other post-secondary experiences after, either as faculty, if you can use that word, or just teaching staff or educational staff in multiple places, or as a student. It's not getting better. Like, it's getting easier to skip school, because it's hard to find the rewarding parts of it. And that's something you have to kind of not blame on the students, people. Okay, so May 21st, 2011. So I had already done the courses with the teachers that I asked references for, and they said they would do it in the anonymous way. It's an official form they do at the university to support a student for the next one. Okay, so statement of purpose. And by the way, when I did this, I had funding for help with a tutor for writing this. And this tutor, we became friends later on, and he's pretty much my only academic reference, although he was never a teacher of mine in school. But he's known my work and my ethics and my improvements and my passion for, again, learning and curiosity. And applying recommendations, because when you learn stuff, and we had great conversations. So he's still somebody I stay in touch with, and he had worked as a PhD professor at that university, but resigned to start, a tutoring business. Statement of purpose. I have always been fascinated with alternate worldviews, ones that did not meet the status quo. This led me to identify myself many years ago as a humanist. I believe humanity to be a small, yet important, part of Earth. I see the Earth as being a complex superorganism. Of course, with this came the desire to learn more about the environment and how we, as members of the global community, interact with it through our ways of work, growth, and play. It is to continue on this path that I wish to apply to your Master of Arts in Sustainable Leisure Management program. To begin, let me inform you of my passion for leisurely activities. I snowboard, play badminton, volleyball, golf, hike beaches and forests, cycle, swim, ride motorcycles, I wrote motorbikes, play croquet, and sing. If I am accepted into the master's program, I hope to play competitively on the VIU badminton team this fall. Personal history. I am a Canadian fully fluent in French and English. When I arrived on Vancouver Island from Quebec some 9 years ago, I had $400, a 1987 BMW, K75C by the way, motorcycle, and a trailer, one wheel, which I had ridden across Canada. This trailer was made from the long black thing you put on the roof of cars for, storage. And there was a wheel, and the shocks were like 4 rubbers in a square. And it was $50 per rubber, but it made great shocks. And it leaned with the bike, right? I had no job and no place to stay. I knew no one at first, though local volleyball community drop-in and badminton leagues quickly remedied that situation. The first years were the hardest, with having to learn about and overcome personal issues with mental illness. Issues, I might add, that made my previous efforts to attend college and university quite challenging. Oh, Martin, I so appreciate your transparent honesty. Although right now they would see me in whatever way they would now label me with this sentence, which again, it was apparent in the program that they would not pay attention. They'd try to figure out, what mental illness is he demonstrating now when he's acting outside the norm? Wow, these great PhD professors, eh? However, since being here, each year has been better than the last. I have been living by the water in Saltaire, a tiny waterfront community between Ladysmith and Chemainus, for 6 years now. I visit my family in Quebec once a year, but I plan to live here on Vancouver Island for the foreseeable future. So I stayed on the island many more years after that letter. My love of Vancouver Island is set in stone. It was completed a few years ago when I did a short contract for a touring company as a guide and a driver for a group of American seniors who came to hike and cycle the island. I saw so many different parts of Vancouver Island at the time that I became hooked on exploring this remarkable region of Canada. Next part is relevant education and work experience. In 1992, I received a DEC, Diplôme d'études collégiales, from le Collège de l'Outaouais. I was telling somebody the other day, one semester, I passed only badminton. And it's good because I was on a badminton team. But then I realized, again, not getting supports back then, getting teachers who, weren't good as teachers. And again, paying student fees that incorporated having the ability to receive services that I didn't know how to reach out for, or nobody was coming to me, say, we help with this, But I also was dating an older girl back then. I was 21. She was 32 around that time. And or a little bit before that, I can't remember. Or a little bit after I quit school, I kind of dated her. And she said one time, she said, I don't know if I would officially date somebody that doesn't have at least a bachelor's degree. She had one in geography. So that kind of helped set me back on course to go back to school. So, because I loved her so much. She's the girl I love with the most passion. And she, when I went back to school, I again, talking to people that advise about how to get a diploma and which program I could be in to finish the credits I need, path of least resistance in the sense of, well, if you go in this program, then all these ones are credited. You'd only need to do this. So, and it turns out I got an 80% average the last 2 semesters to finish that diploma. And part of it is, I think, just knowing which topics, if not teachers, although I knew a lot more of the teachers too back then, but topics that I would find more interesting. And again, that's a strategy I used when I had a choice, for courses at the University of Ottawa. You know what surprised me finishing my college degree is that I took statistics for the first time and found that intuitively statistics came naturally to me. And that's something I often say to students that I tutor math. I said there's a lot of different kind of maths, and there's usually some that come more naturally to people, even that hate math or that have problems with math. And again, when the university that I went to for the master's said you can't come on campus anymore, and that made the students there lose me as one of their only two math tutors, the ones that were getting funding through the disability services. So, like you can really tell they're not really pro-education there, so it's pretty sad. So, so it took about 5 years for me to get a 2-year diploma in college, but like that might tell you as many good things about me as you would think bad things. And I think now in my older age, having done many things after that, people can figure that out. But the program consisted of courses in science, mathematics, criminology, and French. At the University of Ottawa in 1996, I earned a Bachelor of Arts with a major in psychology and a minor in philosophy. I have since attended Malaspina, VIU, completing the Mental Health Certificate Program, which was 80 hours, the Counseling Skills Program, and I would say 2 because there's 1 and 2, which end up being 48 hours. And it's not just theory, right? You practice these skills in triads, where one is the client, one's the listener. The listener also practices the skills we're learning at the time that are specific for counseling. And then there's an observer who will give feedback after they have given each other feedback there first too. And that's the kind of training I'd like to give. And I've done some of that in Uganda, and I'd love to do more of it. And I have the curriculum for it, because having counseling skills is really not just for being a counselor. It's for being somebody who interviews, somebody who wants to be in a relationship, start a family, be a life partner, whatever it is, start a business, is you need these skills. And the Life Skills Coach Training Certificate Program, 253.5 hours. And I've talked a lot about this program before, and it was more life-changing for me than any of my 3 post-secondary degrees when it comes to learning skills that are useful in life. In 2004, I was assigned a contract from Malaspina University College to teach a course in life skills. So I already had a file under faculty with them. So by the way, Malaspina University College became Vancouver Island University. I am the owner, operator of 49th Parallel Driving School. I started this school more than 2 years ago, and it has been a successful endeavor. I am presently in the process of hiring a driving instructor in order to free up my time for graduate school. I have worked for almost 3 years at Salt and Lalem Society in Lanceville. While there, I work as a recovery care worker. I also act as driver and supervisor for clients on outings to the Ladysmith Pool or to 12-step program meetings. During my time at Salt and Lalem, I have developed many close bonds, including with a pair of elders who have adopted me. And then I said their grandson, because I still see myself as young in my head, but they adopted me as their son, and honored me with a First Nations name, Matsquin. Now, the story behind that name is because every time they'd see me at the treatment center when they were the elders in residence for the week, is I'd try to visit a little bit with them, but I'm everywhere doing things, dispensing medicine, doing a little bit of conflict resolution, making sure the meals are going to be prepared, preparing a vehicle for a trip or whatever it might be, checking up on things, sometimes reading notes, because the responsible thing we are supposed to do is when we show up for a shift, especially if we're part-time, is we'd have to read the last 4 days of notes from other workers. because otherwise you are a lot more likely to do a very bad thing without knowing something very important. So one of the reasons they call me that is I'm always flying around crazy. So that word means housefly. But Motsquin is also, because my name's Martin, a way the elder's ancestor that had met their first Martin pronounced it, because, how do you pronounce Martin? And it came out as Motsquin. So that's a funny story. And by the way, a lot of people that receive names, it's a good sign if there's funny story, because it really shows that there's real respect. There's real acceptance, in these family dynamics. Okay. My ties to the First Nations people has grown to include work with other organizations such as Chemainus First Nation and Chemainus Native College in Ladysmith. And with them, I was majoritively to teach a classroom for helping students get their driver's license. And potentially also with Halitan Health Society, which is in Chemainus. Oh, it was hard to actually get anything going with them. Through my other business called Acting Coaching Services, which merged to become the Humanix Academy of Philanthropic Pursuit, which is different from what I'm focusing on now mostly, is the Humanix Youth Academy, and that's a not-for-profit BC society. I am presented with the opportunity to teach things other than driver training. Presently, I host Coach Badminton on Fridays in Crofton. And this program had a lot of rec and tourism teachers. So, I'm not getting into the Earth System Sciences too much there. It, might not have been accepted in the program. I have just completed 2 very strong courses at VIU with Dr. Robert Pfister and Dr. David Robinson. I got an A+ in the former and an A in the latter, although I deserved the same grade as the first course. I was very pleased with my selection to take these 2 courses, as they offered an insightful introduction to topics and activities that I expect to see in the master's program. In Dr. Pfister's course, and I'm sad I lost him because he was preparing to retire after helping to set up this master's degree, so we didn't have him there. And honestly, he was starting to develop dementia, but he's still a great guy, and I wish I would have known him. I mean, I had a guy with dementia in my University of Ottawa psychology course, and I'm telling the faculty, and they said, no, he's publishing a lot of articles. Okay, so that's a little bit worse. So in Dr. Pfister's class, I gave a quick presentation on Earth System Science, and I say Gaia Theory because it's kind of the same thing. Even though it's called Gaia Theory, it's Earth System Science, people, for which I have a strong passion. In Dr. Robinson's class, I presented on mindfulness, and have since become interested in the idea of having a sense of spiritual connection with nature as a way to attain true wellness. By the way, I think when I was saying to Dr. Robinson, Dave, that I wanted to go do the Vipassana meditation retreat that I'd heard about during his class in Merritt, BC, that he said I should go talk to a counselor at the university that had gone. And that counselor advised me not to go. Because, the way I said, well, I got this label from somebody in the past and this label, with mental illness. He said, yeah, no, you're probably not a good fit for you. And that frickin' pissed me off. And it made me want to go more. And I did go. And I did get through the program. And I did benefit from it. And I did learn about myself even more. So isn't it sad that you're seeing a counselor and they believe in you so little that you have to prove them wrong? And when you do, again, you don't get any kind of acknowledgement for it. It's like when I fired a counselor one time. It wasn't that great, but for just not having an accountability when doesn't realize he missed the appointment and that somehow he's so important that it's not even worth an apology. I should just make another appointment. That's how you solve it. You don't need an apology. You just book an appointment. What the hell? Who needs to see counselors like that with zero accountability? So at one point I was seeing a counselor that I really liked for years, on and off, and she's always saying, "Oh no, you don't need that many appointments," but she had a motherly approach, which was great at the beginning of being on Vancouver Island. But then I said at one point, "Hey, no offense, Anne Marie, but I'd like the tough cop at some point." And she tried for a few appointments, but she. So, by the way, the approach of a counselor should be very well understood when they work in places where there's choices, because sometimes you actually graduate from this counselor to this counselor, and it's not because one is more skilled as a listener. It's because approaches sometimes is one of the strategies if the place claims to be client-centered. So the colleague she referred me to is that guy I had fired in the other city years ago. And I said, well, I'm willing to give him another chance, tell him, but I'm still, not impressed with that time. And again, he tried to talk about that at the beginning, but again, he barely remembered anything about that time. And again, his approach was exactly the same, and it wasn't an approach of accountability. So, I didn't fire him with as much passion back then, but I said, yeah, I'd prefer going back with Anne Marie, really. So isn't it sad? You give feedback to counselors, and they think somehow the relationship between you and them makes it that they can ignore it. Isn't that obvious that you can, not consider them to be good counselors or client-centered in this way, especially if it's somebody that already took counseling courses and certificates and has been a counselor to others, and to give feedback and it to be, okay, it's too much work. By the way, my driving school, I thought when I closed it and I wrote a letter to be published on the Chamber of Commerce of Ladysmith website at the time saying thank you to the community, I thought it was 4.5 years. That's what I wrote at first. I had to fix it. It was actually 5.5 years I had my driving school. And one of the reasons it was successful is that I asked feedback. Not only did I ask in lessons, and then I wrote notes and I said, and I've posted about this before, I said, the feedback you're giving me is great, and I knew how to probe for it. And I said, I give you permission to call me on it next time if I don't apply it, because it's my job to read these notes before I see you next time and apply it and prepare for it and be mindful of it. And it's great when I'd ask it. So I know I didn't apply it this time, and then they would give me feedback. And that's how you become good at what you do, people, is you have to care to actually become good at what you do. So I'm going to do part 2 soon of a survey that I would send to my students of the driving school when they're totally finished with passing the road test and all this stuff, and with a self-addressed stamped envelope already, where they could be anonymous if they wanted. So I'm going to offer that in another vlog soon as part 2, because I already showed what I had gotten from the counselor Anne Marie as a simple scaling, probing type of questions, and the other one was for my driving school, but I adapted to all types of services that I offer later on. So I'll show you that in a vlog possibly this week, okay? The part 2 of how to assess for how we do ourselves, if we care to be good at what we do. All right. Presented on mindfulness in Dave Robinson's class, and have since become interested in the idea of having a sense of spiritual connection with nature as a way to attain true wellness. I am very interested in the impact of the human population on the environment and how it may have serious consequences for Earth's complex ecosystems. I say may have, but, I'm kind of playing dumb here, but it's not may have. These are areas of study from which I may choose to prepare my thesis. So I was very clear. Earth system sciences, population, mindfulness about nature. It was very clear. Okay, but I can't seem to have found a thesis supervisor. The first one didn't want me after, the conversations and reading some of my stuff. Second one was very quick to jump there either, already full of stress in her life, kind of using me as a counselor. And then there's no third ones. And I'm the one that tried to find a third one in their Master of Leadership and Education, except that it's also people who are domesticated academic automatons there too, are worried about trying something or learning something new or or meeting somebody with passion about a topic. So again, they failed me. So of course, I should be taking them to court. It's just the legal system doesn't make it easy. But I'm still working on it. I am also interested in lecturing on these topics as a way to finance my retirement. Should you require any more information from me, please do not hesitate to email or phone me. Sincerely, Martin Parizeau. I'll stop at this appendix, and I'll do another one maybe tomorrow or soon. But again, this letter included as an appendix in the firing letter saying, I was very clear. This is who I am. This is what I'm going into. This is what I'm studying. This is what's important. And they accepted me for this. So that's why I put it in the appendix. Because after that, they didn't support me in this at all. They tried to a little bit orient me somewhere else, which would be easier for them, which they didn't work really hard to do because it doesn't work on a critical thinker, who kind of knows how to ask the right questions and is passionate. And without that passion, and with them playing games all the time and prolonging things, which gets me in more student loans, then, not the right kind of support. And I knew support services existed there, and I could make use of them. But, I mean, if you don't get support from your own freaking master's degree faculty, just because they needed to put somebody in there and keep growing in and moving money around, and, that's not success. So anyways, I'm stopping now, and I'm going to remind you where we are at when I read again. I skipped Appendix 1 to make it its own thing at the end as a plan B, if I don't have anything else to do. And then there's a couple more appendix to be included. Appendices? Is that what you say? And the other thing I wanted to say is I already read one of the other reading material for this course, which is a 4-page letter I wrote to the Ministry of Education. And the last thing after this, because I didn't finish reading my thesis introduction draft for you yet. I will include that at some point. But the last document I wrote, which was the part 2 of the time capsule, because part 1 was written during this master's program, is part 2 will be the final one, and it's the longer one. But it really shows, if you add them together, more than 100 pages of the learnings that I did during this that has created me being able to offer this Master of Science and Ecocentric Worldview, which was desperately needed as the evidence from this so-called sustainability program was lacking and failed in. Okay, so thank you very much, and I hope that you get what I'm saying, but it's only if you care.